Bryce Hall. If there's one thing I know about Bryce Hall, it's that he has hair. And you know what, so does everybody else, but it seems to be a popular style that a lot of people are going for these days. And here's the thing about Bryce Hall, I have a theory that if he didn't have his hair, he might look a little something like this. And nobody's really gonna be into that. So if you're somebody who would rather look like this, stick around, sit back and relax, because this is a hairstylist analysis of Bryce Hall. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Jesse's Barber Shop. My name is Jesse, and if you're new here and you're somebody who's looking for men's hair tips, tricks, tutorials, advice, that kind of stuff, please consider hitting that subscribe button because that's what I do. In today's video, we're going to be going over Bryce Hall's hairstyle. Now, expect this video to be broken down into three major parts. The first being hair analysis, where we're gonna be going over things such as his hair type, his texture, his hair condition, and going over some reference photos and videos just to kind of see if we can gather some information as to what is allowing him to get the style that he has. The second part is going to be styling. So we're going to be going over some of the techniques he may be using, the styling products, and what you might have to do if you were trying to get this hairstyle for yourself at home. And finally, we're going to be going over what to tell your barber if you are looking to get this hairstyle for yourself. We're going to be going over what you need to do with your hair and what you need to tell your barber when you're sitting down in the chair looking to get this style. So without further ado, let's dive straight into phase one, hair analysis. Okay, so right off the bat, as a hairstylist, one of the first things I look for when I'm determining if a style is gonna be able to work out for somebody is their hair type. I can tell just based off first impressions that Bryce Hall doesn't have the thickest head of hair. Now there's a few indicators of that. The first of which being a photo like this, you can see towards his temple area, it's not thinning necessarily, but it's not super thick. If somebody had super thick, coarse hair, especially at that length, it's going to be more of just a one solid block, whereas you can kind of see it starting to come through there. It's nothing major, but it's just, I mean, that's one of the indicators. Oh, fuck you. I mentioned this in my last video, but two major parts to determining somebody's hair type, and that is density and texture. Density refers to the amount of hair follicles per square inch. So imagine a dense forest having a lot of trees. Imagine a sparse forest having not so many trees. Texture refers to the diameter of the individual strand. So somebody with a coarse texture will have a wider diameter per strand, and somebody with a finer texture will have a smaller diameter per strand. And a fun way to test this is what you can do is you can take one of your hairs out, just one. If you can't feel it in your fingers, or just barely, you probably have a fine texture. If you can kind of feel it, but it's not like too major, it's probably a medium texture. And if you pull it out and you're rubbing it through your fingers and it feels like you got like a string or like hay, then you got a coarse texture. I definitely have coarse texture hair. Pull one of my hairs out and you can definitely feel it into your strand. So if you're looking to see if you have a similar hair texture, that's a good way to do that. And also what I will say, we'll kind of get into this more in step two, but the hair texture, especially for this hairstyle, does have a lot to do with it. So we'll get into that in a second here. The second thing I'm noticing is if you're somebody with super thick hair, you won't be able to achieve this texture without like massive thinning. And it looks like based on a lot of these photos is he's getting that wispiness in his hair. Looks to be quite natural. I can't imagine that his stylist was just ripping through there with thinning shears or anything like that. So something like that kind of thing. Something like that. Yeah, I would say density wise, sparse to medium density, which is a huge factor into how he's able to get this style. When it comes to texture, I mean, he's a white guy. Just based visually, I can assume that it's somewhere between fine and medium. That's pretty standard for a white guy with this hair type. Well, let's look at a little more things. Oh, wow. Look at this, look at this. Look at this well-diverse group of young individuals. So diverse and welcoming to all. Look, I mean, look, there's a white guy with blonde hair. There's a white guy with brown hair. And look, oh, look, there's even a white guy with black hair. So diverse. Let's see if we can find something here. Yeah, something like this, similar indicators. It looks a little frizzy towards the ends, which probably has to do with his color, but I mean, okay, major points of this. Sparse to medium density. He doesn't have the thickest head of hair, but he's not going bald or anything like that by any means. It's just not the thickest head of hair. Texture-wise, fine to medium texture, and actually, what's interesting is with this hair type, I imagine that if he didn't texturize it and he didn't color it, it would sit like kind of like OG Justin Bieber style. In fact, let's see if we can pull it. Look at that, boom. That's exactly what I meant. So if you have, this is very common. A lot of people will have this hair type and they'll say, oh, it sits flat, I can't do anything with it. BRYCE Hall's a perfect example of this. It's that finer, smoother texture, but when you're styling it correctly and you get it cut in the proper way, you can achieve more texture, you know, something like that. But yeah, if you have this hair type, this is kind of what your hair will naturally sit like. And realistically, a lot of the dudes that are rocking this hairstyle will have this texture. So if you're somebody who has this texture and you're going for the style, that's a good bet. That doesn't necessarily mean that if you don't have this texture or you have Asian in you like me and your hair is a little bit more coarse, that doesn't mean you can't get this style. It's just the reason that I think so many of these guys have this style is because it's just the easiest. I mean, it's a very easy style to do with this type of hair. So I think that's pretty much it for part 1 here. Let's dive into part 2, which is the styling aspect. Going through some photos, we're seeing pretty short sides. It looks like it's slightly disconnected on the sides, which you hear the term disconnected undercut all the time, but realistically, it's a bit of a, what's the word? I cannot think of the word. I'll Google it and throw it up. But it is redundant to say disconnected undercut, because if you have an undercut, it has to be disconnected. All disconnected means is that the interior of your hair, or the top, is a different length or completely different length than the exterior of hair, the sides. My hair, for example, is not disconnected. It is connected because my sides and my top are the same length. Whereas if I had an undercut, my top would be longer and my sides would be either shorn or slightly shorter. So that's kind of what BRYCE Hall's doing with his hair. I think one of the major things that kind of makes his hair is the texture on the top. I imagine he's taking some sort of like matte paste or something that kind of gives a little bit of grit to your hair, and he kind of, you know, this is what he's been rocking more recently, I believe. I don't keep up with, I do. I follow TikTok Room. So I mean, back in Addison days, he only had more of a messier, texturized look going on. But more recently, he's been rocking kind of more Logan polish, where it's down towards the front. Facts, he's got a big forehead. He's not receding or anything like that as far as I know, but I've seen pictures of his forehead and it's definitely larger, which is, I mean, I think a big reason why he wears his hair down to the front like that. If you have a higher hairline or receding at all, like towards the like the recession areas up here, it's oftentimes a strategy to wear your hair down over your forehead to kind of hide that. That is definitely done intentionally. So that's something that you guys might want to consider too. Product recommendations depends on, oh, I'm so pasty. Ugh. Stop looking, stop looking. Product recommendation wise, it's going to depend on your specific hair type, but what I would say by default is like a matte paste, something that'll give it that grit, because what that does is if your hair has been texturized, it'll start clumping the hair towards the roots, which will allow it to chunk up in places and give it that dimension that you're seeing in here and like here. And yeah, it doesn't look like there's any shine to his hair. So I mean, stay away from like pomades, gels, that kind of thing. Look for, or even creams. You wanna go for more of a matte wax paste. But I think that's probably good for stage 2. So I think what we'll do now is jump into stage 3, where we're going to be talking about what you need to do with your hair beforehand and what you need to tell your barber when you're sitting down in the chair looking to get this haircut. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to mention before I started to switch the set, he does have color in his hair. Now, that's probably doing 2 things. Remember that photo I showed you of young BRYCE Hall when his hair is super smooth and fine? Coloring your hair is gonna do 2 things for that. The first of which is going to be, it's going to slightly damage your hair. Now, that hair type is super smooth, super healthy, so what bleaching does, it will slightly damage the hair and give it a little bit more grit or a little bit more texture. That helps with, it's going to just give you a little bit more control, whereas that natural hair is going to sit super flat, not stay in the position you want to put it. You put that color in your hair, you give it that slight chemical damage, and it will be more responsive to styling implements like blow drying and product as well. The second thing it's going to do is the dimension that you see in BRYCE Hall's hair, like my hair for example, if I styled my hair that way, it wouldn't pop as much because it's all the same color. When you have that color in your hair or highlights, what that does is when the hair starts texturizing and piecing out, you really see that. Like all this, like this blonde, will be a pop of blonde, and everything underneath, even if it's the same color, will pick up shadows and highlights a little bit more. So that's something that I was going to mention that I forgot. But anyways, I'm gonna go set up over there now for part 3. So let's get into that. Thanks. So first of all, as always, the best thing you can do is bring in pictures. Download them on your phone, look them up, show your barber exactly what you're looking for. The barber can either tell you, yep, I know how to do this, this will work perfectly, I know exactly how to do it, or they will say something like, this is why you can't get this haircut, here's something that I can get you kind of close. So bring in pictures, but from a technical standpoint, what you're gonna wanna ask for is leaving a lot of length towards the front. Now, if you're going to a barber who's not super familiar with this type of hairstyle, they're going to want to cut the front short, just because it makes sense. It just makes sense. It makes sense from a men's cut perspective to balance the front with the back. But with this haircut specifically, you can leave a lot of length towards the front. So that's going to be something that you want to make sure you mention to your barber. Now, if you're somebody with that smoother, natural hair type, what you're going to want to make sure that they do is texturize. Now, just make sure your barber knows what he's doing. If you're somebody with finer hair, you definitely don't want to overdo the texturing. So just make sure it's enough, just the ends, to make sure you can get that movement and that flow going. Texturizing is going to be a huge thing, because as you saw Bryce Hall's hair when he was younger, that's the standard or default somebody with this hair type's hair will go to. And then through styling and manipulation and the proper haircut, that's how you achieve that more texturized look. So length in the front, texturize. When it comes to the sides, I think that's going to be preferential. I kind of like the fact he doesn't go for like a mid fade or anything like that. Usually he just kind of tapers the sides, so that's going to be completely up to you. In regards to what you would tell your barber for that, generally they'll understand that a taper is just kind of the sideburns and the back, which is something that Bryce Hall goes for. But if you want to go for like a low or mid fade, that'll look perfectly fine too. What else? Color, gonna be completely up to you. Like I said, color can help with achieving that look, but if you're not somebody who colors the hair, you don't want to get into that. I mean, it can be a hassle and it does damage your hair, so that's going to be completely preferential. But I think that's it for the major things you're going to have to ask for. I feel like I'm always going to say this, but make sure your barber has the technical ability to achieve what you're going for. A lot of barbers, great with fades, but when it comes to cutting for length, depends on the barber, some are not super good at that. So you want to just make sure that whoever you're going to, they know what they're doing, they're capable, and you trust them. That's the main thing. But remember, it's just hair. So if your barber fucks it up, good. So I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say about this hairstyle. If you guys enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, because we're kind of popping off. My last video did pretty well. I think we're just over 300 subscribers now, which is awesome. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below if you guys have a hairstyle that you want me to analyze next. Thank you guys for watching. This has been my hairstyles analysis of Bryce Hall's hair, and we'll hopefully see you in the next video.